Welcome to the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers podcast channel. My name is Jen Thiessen.
And I'm Kyla Musselman, and we'll be here to guide you through these episodes, which are made possible thanks to Canada Council for the Arts.
The Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers, CGDC, is a national arts service organisation advocating for the rights, interests and protection of stage directors and choreographers and their assistants and associates.
These first episodes are snippets from our Assistant and Associate Program series, featuring industry leaders with insight about the theatre creation process, shared with you with the hopes of enriching our community.
In today's episode, we demystify the role of an artistic director with artistic director Mary Frances Moore.
And we're going to get into it because we're very excited. Hello! Today we are joined by a powerhouse in Canadian theatre. Mary Frances Moore is here today. Mary Frances is an award-winning director, playwright, and dramaturg known for her bold artistic vision and commitment to new work. As a champion of original storytelling, she has helped bring numerous productions to life that have toured across Canada, the US, and the UK. Currently serving as the artistic director of Theatre Aquarius in Hamilton, Ontario, Mary Frances has helmed standout productions at her home theatre, such as Maggie, The Hours That Remain, Hairspray, A Christmas Story, the musical, and Beautiful Scars. She also directed the American premiere and touring productions of Maggie, the Robin Hood Panto at Canadian Stage, and Kronberg at the Charlottetown Festival, where she previously served as associate artistic director. Her passion for storytelling, innovation, and artistic excellence continues to shape the future of Canadian theatre. We are so grateful to have her with us today to share her insights on being an artistic director. Give it up for Mary Frances Moore. Thank you again for being here. So we are going to dive right in because you said you're going to explain how your day went. So can you take us through a day in your life as artistic director? What are the responsibilities, parameters? How does it go over there?
Well, I think the thing I would say is it's never the same day twice, and that's kind of why I love it. I've never done like a Stratford or a Shaw contract. The longest sort of work contract I've ever done is at the Charlottetown Festival because I could never imagine myself in anything or any place or any project for more than I don't know, a couple months. So I'm going into my fourth year at Theatre Aquarius, and I don't think I've ever had the same day, 2 days in a row. So I love it. Today was interesting because Mondays aren't usually really heavy meeting days. Like I have Tuesday meetings, and Tuesdays are like, I do all my weekly meetings. Like a Tuesday is like, I meet with my education director. We have a staff meeting. I meet with my production manager. I have a marketing meeting. Like it's just like boom, boom, boom. I always start every day trying with emails, and I get about 3 emails in, and then it just goes to hell in a handbasket. But I think it also depends on the time of year. So I'm just coming out of announcing our season. We just announced our season about 2 weeks ago. Normally we would we would have had our board approval before Christmas. So for me personally, I tried to have my season set last November before I started rehearsals for A Christmas Story, the musical. And then it goes through all the different levels of like committees at the board, and then you get the final board approval. So now we're knee deep into auditions and casting for this season. So today was all about casting and getting creative team contracts done. So no, not done, attempting to get them moving forward. So that was today. Who knows what tomorrow will be?
So your responsibilities as an AD day to day is to oversee, this is a question, everything, like you're overseeing artistically as well as administrative, or like where does that lie?
Yeah, I think it's different probably for every organization. For those of you who've worked at Aquarius since I became AD there, you'll know we are like a lean and mean organization. I will say with great pride in my co-leader, Kelly Strawn, we erased our deficit this year, and that was a really hard thing to do. Because if you go onto a theater's website, you can always see financials for every theater, right? And so that was something that was really important to us, that we did that. And it wasn't easy. We had to make some sacrifices and things, like we want to be super generous. We want to pay people more. We want to offer accommodation. We want to pay mileage. We want to do all these things because we're both actors, but also we're responsible to the board for the financial responsibility of the theater, which is really boring sometimes, right? But but essential because we also have to pay for things like HVAC and air conditioning, and we pay the snowplow people the same no matter what, whether it snows or doesn't, right? You sign that contract in August. And then there are people who've worked at the theater for 40 years. And so, I'm always aware of like the responsibility I carry and that Kelly carries to the community that we live in. Um, so so that was a big thing. So
Yeah.
so we do meetings. So but Kelly and I very much co-lead. And I think because we both were actors, then we both directed. And then Kelly went into executive direction and I went into artistic direction. But we understand each other's jobs and we respect each other's jobs. And we also are very clear that we don't want each other's jobs. But what it helps with is there's probably things that a lot of artistic directors wouldn't, like they'd stay in their lane and wouldn't really be paying attention to sort of the operations side of things. But I'm actually really interested in that. And because Kelly comes from a similar background to me, like I can go into her office and say, like, just need to know, like, before I rage respond to this, what is your creative brain say this? So I think I straddle both worlds probably a lot more than some ADs,
Mm.
but in a very practical term, it's also because we don't have a big staff, and we are very mindful of that because we are trying to save people's jobs. So if I can do a couple of versions of a couple of different people's jobs, then other people get to keep theirs.
Is there an element of this role that you wish more people in the industry understood, something that you think gets overlooked?
I think that I wish, because I used to be an actor, I wish that we could share more of what our jobs are to actors and to creative teams, from something as simple as, choosing the season and all the variables in the season and the last minute adjustments you make. Or like for me, I'm very committed to the voices of the people who live in my community. We're only an hour outside of Toronto, but there's still people who choose to live and work in my community. So I always have an eye toward that. I think I wish more people knew about sort of what the mandates of each theater are. And I think we live in a world, I'm going to sound like I'm 110 now, but I think we live in a world where like people put a lot of things on social media. Like there was this thing a couple of weeks ago where it was like more artistic directors should just program all Canadian seasons. And then there was all these like likes and hell yes. And I'm like, my first two seasons were all Canadian. Last year, four of my six shows were Canadian. This year, five of my seven are Canadian. But I think there's just this thing of like this blanket, we're all the same. And the needs of each theater are different. The communities we live in are different. Our responsibilities to our communities and to our boards are different. And also like where are we putting our energy and what is our strategic plan for each theater? And so I think there's this gross generalization. Like we're considered an A house, but we're the lowest budget A house in the country. So we're not the same. Like Mirvish is an A house, not Mirvish is an A house. Stratford's an A house. Shaw's an A house. The NAC is an A house. We're an A house. We are not the same as the NAC. Again, if people just sort of knew about the theater they're talking about, I think it would make artists feel more informed about their relationship with that theater, so that you'd know, like, oh, they're not doing your play, or they're not paying attention to what's happening, and they're not giving this voice to this writer. It's the need in that particular community is being asked to serve somewhere else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. Actually, I knew this, but it didn't like click. How deeply involved with your community you are. Like you are a community leader, not just a theater leader. You're like a big part of your ecosystem in Hamilton. You're the arts that you can give. Yeah, I don't know. It did really, really click there right now that you are serving your community first. Yeah.
Well, it's a big thing for me. My background, my specialization was in drama and education and community outreach. And so it's the very core of my artistic practice. And so I'm constantly questioning, like, what is our function in this community? If we closed shop, who would miss us? And what would they miss about us? I don't want our purpose in the community to be transactional, that we sell tickets to shows, that people have to pay an admission to come into our building. I feel like the people who live in this city are the stakeholders of this theater. And so I want to give them art that they feel excited about and engaged with. And we always say, like, if we do a 6 play main stage season, we have a Brave New Works Festival, we've got a theater school. Now we have the National Center for New Musicals. We do playwrights recommender grants. Like we have a lot happening. I can't name everything, but like we've got our Pindigan Indigenous Youth Leadership Program starting tomorrow. Like not everybody will like everything, but
Yeah.
it will always be artistically excellent. So, and when people don't engage with us, that's the thing where I'm like, okay, if you don't like the programming, that's one thing, but what are the other barriers that are stopping you from coming here? And that's where I find every day, like that's where I sort of feel the purpose of like, how do we keep asking that question so that we remain vital and relevant on our little street corner?
Love that intention. Going into then expectations of this role, and has this role, since you've been in it, evolved, changed? Was it what you thought it was going to be? How have you seen this role evolve?
I think, well, I took over at Aquarius at sort of near the end of the pandemic. And so when I got there, there was nobody in the building. There was the executive director and I. And I wanted to meet the community. And the community expressed an interest to talk to me and to sort of debrief with me and let me know what was happening in the arts community. And I couldn't even open our doors to them. And that had been like my whole thing of like, come in, come in. We're, um, we are an inclusive space, except nobody's allowed in. So I went to Canadian Tire and I bought a little bistro set and I parked it outside the theater and I just met artists one-on-one at my little bistro set outside the theater. And so to think back, like that kind of feels like a million years ago now, but it's not. It's really not. So I think I thought things would happen faster. I'm not a patient person. And I'm very much, I come from indie theater. And so I'm very much like you roll up your sleeves and you collect the beer bottles and you return them and you have the garage sale and you make the money and you do the show. And so when someone's like, well, it doesn't fit the plan and we're 18 to 24 months out, like that was to me, I didn't understand that. And so I think I've had to learn how to adjust my own expectations and also be okay with not being able to serve all needs at all time. So we launched NCNM last year and that's been going really well. But then I realized, well, what am I doing for the playwrights in this community who aren't writing musicals? Okay, so then what do I do with that with the 35 cents that I have left over? And then if I'm telling the stories of these voices and what about these and what artists? And so it's like I think my first sort of it took me about 2 years to kind of go like, oh, I'm not going to get it all. I'm not going to do it all at the same time. I think I just have to get used to the idea of like I'm always going to disappoint people. And that doesn't mean I'm not doing my best. And that doesn't mean that the people I work with are not doing their best as well. But it's a crappy feeling because I've had the great fortune to work in a lot of really great places in a lot of really cool countries. And I think Canadian artists are astonishing. I think our talent is unbelievable. And I'm constantly picking my jaw up off the floor at what we can do here. And so I want to scream that from the rooftops and showcase everybody all the time. And I can't. So that's been my big learning.
Okay, so then tell us about your leadership approach. How do you maintain like one family unit, if you will, that everybody is driving towards the same goal?
I was fortunate when I arrived that there had been an equity audit done at the theater prior to my arrival, and it had been signed by 100 community members. And so it was one of the first pieces of mail that I received. And so it was a fairly substantial piece. And so for me, it's kind of been this North Star for us of like, oh, it's laid out in writing what the expectation is. This is what the people who live here expect this theater to be or need this theater to be.
Can you explain what an equity audit is? I don't know.
A firm was hired to interview people in the community, people who'd written letters about the theater, people who had worked at the theater, people who can work full time at the theater, guest artists. And so based on experiences and feedback, it was sort of like a little bit of a directive of the direction the theater needs to go in. And I think it was a big part of why I was hired for my artistic practice, how I work. And so I think for me, it's always knowing that we won't always get everything right, but we will always try our best. And that we do like that we're bringing our best selves to work. And that when we talk about the not in our space speeches, that happen in theaters on day one, sometimes it feels, they feel like you read them off of a piece of paper and it feels kind of distant and disengaged. And the beauty of our work is that no matter how many years we do it and how much wisdom we gain and how much experience we gain and what every experience is, the first day of every show, we get this wonderful privilege of being beginners again, right? Because we're starting something brand new every time. And I think that is something I really lean into and I hold on to in terms of as our company that we don't get stale, we don't get stagnant because every new show is day one. Tomorrow night we're doing an art unveiling. Tom Wilson is a Mohawk artist whose show Beautiful Scars, we did the world premiere of his musical last year. Tom is also this prolific painter, and he's donated two pieces of spectacular art to the theater. And we're doing this event tomorrow night, and we've got these drummers coming in, and we have this knowledge keeper who we work with very closely at the theater. And I don't know what Phil's going to say in his speech. I don't know what Tom's going to say. It's our first night of the Pindigan leadership group. We get a chance to do this for the first time tomorrow, and that's really exciting to me. And then we'll go into the first day of the second year of a program. So it's all new, a new cohort. Like, so there's just that feeling of we're constantly looking at our North Star, but we never get there. And whether the show is sold out or whether the show hits its targets, like sometimes it's really important to remember that it's not just about the ticket sales, right? It's about like, what's our function? Why did we do it? We
Mhm.
just did Casey and Diana. I've never received so much mail from people just saying like, thank you for doing this show. This is what this show means to me. People told me like deeply personal stories about people they had lost in their lives. And that was this great reminder to go like, oh yeah, like reviews and ticket sales, right, right. Like, but as an artistic director, sometimes we get so caught up in that because those are the numbers we present back out to the world, right? We're always social media happy.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it's really important just to remember, like, why did I program a play when I programmed it almost 18 months ago?
Oh, always, yes, your North Star, look towards your North Star. But then let's talk about how you got into artistic directorship. Like, how did you know this is what you wanted to do? Like, what pushed you that way? Give us your art AD origin story.
Well, when I was an actor, so I did my degree in drama and education and community outreach, but I was also an actor. And so I was acting a lot. And I would go into theaters and I'd always just be sort of looking around and kind of be like, oh, that's not how I would do that. Or I wonder why they do it this way. Or um, really, that's how you're going to market that? You know, like I just had I had a lot of thoughts. I hope I didn't articulate them. I hope I kept them to myself. Um, but I was very interested in it. And I think because I also write and I directed and I did a lot of collective creation work early on in my career. I think there was just a collaborative nature to my work, and so as I got more and more into directing, I was paying more attention to artistic direction. Um, and then when I had my kids, I just realized like I didn't want to be out every night. I wanted to be home for bedtime, which was a big thing for me. Um, and then again, it was more about being in theaters and there were some theaters that just felt great. And
Mm.
I couldn't tell you how much money I made at them, but I remember the feeling I had when I worked there. And I felt like I was part of something and I felt really inspired to be there. And I think a lot of it came down to who was in charge at those theaters at the time, like who was leading the organization, what was the feeling in the building. And that just became something that I was really interested in. And then I've, so I was an associate very early on in my career, and I was really fortunate, but I also recognized, and it was a big responsibility at a theater, and I was like in my early 20s, and I realized, oh, I'm not ready to do this yet. I'm not ready to be in one place and
Mm.
commit to this. Like, I need to go be an actor and do all these things because it was exciting and it was incredible, but I wasn't ready for it. For me personally, I had to go have more adventures. So then when I was offered it again later on in my career, I was so ready to make that commitment at the exclusion of everything else. I was ready to put those other things on the back burner, which I wasn't early on. So it's kind of a series of happy accidents, but there's also things that I feel like everything I've ever done has led me to being here now. So there were jobs I did that I felt like I just want to be on stage. Why am I doing this stupid job? And now I'm like, oh, it's now I know how to read a budget. I know how to read an Excel spreadsheet, teaching for a lot of years that helped supplement my acting career. I'm like, oh, I know what I'm asking teachers now who work for me. I know what I'm asking of them. I know how to run a theater school. I know what a successful class is. Like, yeah, it's just a series of things, I think. I think had I knew I always wanted to be an artistic director, but I don't
Okay.
plan like I knew I wanted to be an artistic director, but I didn't have like a cutoff date.
Mhm.
And at the time there were only about two theaters that I wanted to run, and Theater Aquarius was one of them.
Manifest it, put it out there, it shall happen. Yeah, so
Mm.
that's interesting. You just inherently know, yeah, I can do that.
I really think of it as leadership more as kind of the room you want to create. And I think before, like there wasn't language in the 90s and early 2000s around like rooms and access needs and like we just didn't we didn't have I didn't have language for that. So now I'm like, oh, of course I was going to end up in this job. That just makes sense. But at the time I think I was craving sometimes I was craving what I wasn't getting
Mm.
as an actor in someone else's space or as a director in someone else's space. So I try to think about like what do people need to come into a theater? If you're billeting in someone's house and you're far away from home, and you're all over the country right now, some of you like what is it you need when you come to work in the morning? And I try to think about that. So I guess that's leadership, but I wasn't
Yeah.
thinking about it that way.
Can you speak to your experience as an associate artistic director? What were some of the key learning experiences that you had?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think I understood. Even as an associate, I don't think I understood how hard it is to be an artistic director in terms of that sense of disappointing people, or like how you're never off. You're never off. Like you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking about that email you forgot to send, or can we really, if I pay that person $50 extra a week, like it's these small things. You never stop. I don't think I even understood that as an associate. I was so fortunate because I was an associate. Adam Brazier is the artistic director of the Confederation Center for the Arts. And Adam just empowered me so much to really pursue my artistic curiosities, and I felt like I had a voice and I had autonomy and I had decision making. I think helping to program, that was huge. That was really, really big. Being allowed a voice in the programming in the mornings, sort of in the once the shows were up. Bob Foster is the music supervisor at the Charlottetown Festival, and Bob and Adam and I would invariably end up in Adam's office with coffee, and we would just start shooting out titles, right? And we would just riff on titles, and we would explore things and talk them to death till we bored ourselves, and we're like, hey, yeah, no, that's not a good title. And like, so I learned a lot about programming, learned a lot about casting, and um, I had the biggest experience of my life on a project at the Charlottetown Festival called the Dream Catchers, and that really informed everything I do as my artistic practice. And that was 2017, but the experience I had leading into that was 2016 and into 2017, and I wouldn't have had that experience without my job at the Charlottetown Festival, and it really informed everything about how I work, like decolonizing my practice, how I behave in an audition room, everything about how I work came from that project. And that's thanks to Adam being his associate.
Would you be open to sharing some of those tenets, some of those things, those key points that like guide your practice then?
Yeah, no, it's something as simple as like who's in the room when you walk in? How do we greet each other when you walk in? Like not everybody's resume needs to look like it came from an agent downtown Toronto. Like what does triple threat mean if
Mm.
you don't live in downtown Toronto and if you live in Iqaluit? What are you a triple threat at? That we don't English is not always our first language, and should we be, making rehearsal spaces or audition spaces feel that people can bring their full selves into the room. I just realized I was caught in this sort of rhythm of, well, this is how you do it. And it's like this rinse, repeat kind of mentality. And once I stopped to question it, because I'd had this wonderful opportunity to travel across the country. I was the only non-Indigenous member of a creative team that traveled across the country. I was the only woman and the only non-Indigenous person on the team. And I went into really remote places. I went into other urban centers. I worked with kids in foster care. I worked with people coming into like prison systems. I really had this really wonderful experience to sort of go like, oh, there's more than one way of doing what we do. We just sort of call it capital T theater, and what happens if we don't? And magic still happens, and beauty still happens. And what happens when you walk into a room and there's like, I did this audition on the weekend, and no matter what I tried to do, I kept getting moved back into the center of the table. And I hate being behind a table now. Like I always want to be at the end of a table. I don't want someone to walk in and see a series of people behind a table. It's small things, but then it's also just how we run a room. I've always loved collaboration, And so I think that I take that into every room I go into. I take that into the office I work in, so
That really comes across. All of your stories are all about like how you've collaborated with someone, how like it brings out these other, the qualities that you need and they need, and everybody gets something out of it. It absolutely comes across. And then, so this is an interesting question as well, then. How do you cut your teeth on things like strategic planning or board relations? Like, how do you start that out when it's a new experience for you?
I would really recommend volunteering on a board
Hmm.
because you get to know what that is, where you don't carry all the responsibility of it too on your own as leadership. So you sort of get to you learn the language. Something I'm really wanting to do before I ever leave Theatre Chorus is I would like to have a youth board or a younger, like a a different version of a board so that it's people who can learn how to be on a board. So
Yes.
that when they walk into being on the actual board, they understand the language. Because it's all the things we do every day as artists.
Mm.
All of the things we do as we negotiate and we know what an objective is. We know what tactics are. We know what to do when we don't get what we want. We try the next tactic. It's a language we already speak. They just use different words. And I think there's committees on boards, so you can join a board and then you can also volunteer on the committee, different committees on that board of things that you're actually passionate about. Is it we don't call it the DEI committee at Theatre Course, we call it the IDEA committee, because it's inclusivity, diversity, equity, and accessibility. And that was brought by one of our Mohawk board members. She gave us that language. And so that's something, there's governance, there's development, there's finance, like there's all things that you can learn from. And then you can swap committees as well. So, and I would also I love talking about our strategic plan. Call me. Don't email me because I'll never get chance to email you back, but call me and ask me about it. I love talking about it because it's how we guide our building, right? It's how we guide our work. So it's always good for artists. You could ask any artistic director because it forces them to walk their talk and think about why they're doing what they're doing.
So, sorry, can you just then possibly elaborate the definition of like strategic planning is what? Seeing like your 5-year plan of your entire.
Yeah, like your 5-year plan. Like, what is your mission statement? Like, what's
Yeah.
that thing you put on your website? What's that thing when you say we are a blah 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 da 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 da? Um, we aim to tell stories that speak to the community. Like I think we have words like aim and ignite and inspire.
Yes.
Um, but then you have our things like for our theater school. What are our goals for our theater school?
Mhm.
Um, it's to obviously increase the number of students, but what kind of theater school education do we want to give them? What do we want them to leave with? Um, when we're talking about our programming, we want to elevate all voices. How do we want to elevate those voices? Like where are we paying special attention to? Like that, that whole goes back to like that role in the community and put on really great theater, put on really great shows, right? Like I'm so much of my work is in new development. So it was new work. As an actor, I was in a lot of new plays. I directed a lot of new plays, dramaturged a lot of new plays. So that's something I'm bringing in as well as something that's really important to the theater is that we are birthing new work every season.
We are birthing new work. Love that. What do you look for in your assistants, associates, people that you're looking to mentor? What are some qualities that you look for in those individuals?
It's interesting. I think curiosity is the biggest one because we have so much to offer in how we do what we do and why we do it. I think it goes back to that thing again about always getting to be a beginner. So there are people who I've had as associates who have experience I've never had. Their lived experience is very different than my experience. How they move through the world is very different than how I do. So that comes with so much. Um, there's this rich experience in the room when that person comes in. It doesn't matter that I'm the AD or that I'm the director. It's who are we as humans when we come into the room. And I think it's that curiosity. I think it's interesting. Like I've had assistants, particularly since I've been at Aquarius, who've come in and, they're blown away by the amount of like that things happen a year and a half in advance. So you're by the time you get to day one of rehearsal, it's almost like the project's almost over because you've spent so much time. Like I've gone to so many donor dinners to raise money to get this show done. I've gone to like how many grants did we write for the development of the piece? Like just all these things that you do, like the costume designs, that like all the things that happen that by we get to day one and it's like oh my gosh, we're here. Like, and I think because I was an assistant, I also know what it feels like to be an assistant. I once, when I was assistant, the director asked me to give notes to an actor, and I went to her dressing room to give the notes, and she said, "I don't take notes from assistants," and slammed the door in my face. Um, and so I never want to put someone in that position, but I'm also mindful of like giving people an experience that's worthwhile, that they're not there to get my coffee, that they're there for an experience. And um, I think sometimes it's more successful. And not every match is perfect. Not every connection is perfect, but I don't think I've ever had an associate or an assistant that I haven't felt like they made the project better. They made the project richer for being in the room with us.
Because collaboration, more voices. I hear. I see,
Yeah.
Mary Frances. And then what advice do you have for the next generation of artists who are looking to move into these artistic leadership positions?
I think it's always like no matter what generation you are, like it always feels like this is the most broke we've ever been. This is the most challenged we've ever been. And I feel like people have been saying that forever. And so I would say like if you to just keep telling the stories, like to trust the stories. Like someone asked me today, is there a trend with am I getting a lot of trends with plays with new submissions? And I was like, no, because we have so many brilliant artists in this country. Like there's everybody's telling their story in their own way. And so I feel like trust your voice. I've noticed this. The only trend I'm noticing is that when people are applying for things, sometimes they're applying with how they identify and not what their project is. They're almost like producing it for me on their piece of paper so that they're making their project as easy to fit into something instead of as imaginative. And I think we operate from this scarcity complex. And I do it myself, but to dream big, like to keep dreaming big and keep having big ideas. And so if we keep thinking about making our ideas smaller
Mhm.
and more budget friendly or easier to produce, there's a sameness in that, I think. And I think I would just encourage us to keep having big ideas and big dreams.
Mary Frances, before we wrap up this little session, I will just recap some incredible things that you said today. You said that no day is the same as when you are an artistic director. Every day is different. The community are stakeholders in your theater, and you serve the community as well as putting on great art. There are always new beginnings, and you're always a beginner. What joy. Don't assume others' expectations. I liked that one. Clear as kind. It's hard. You're always on, and you will disappoint people. There's more than one way to do what we do. What happens if we don't? Join a board or a committee to learn about the process before you're at the front of it. Be curious, trust your voice, and dream big. Thank you so much for this time, Mary Frances. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you very much. This podcast was made possible by Canada Council for the Arts and brought to you by the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers. CGDC advocates for the rights, interests, and protection of professional stage directors, choreographers, and their assistants and associates.
To learn more, give them a follow on Insta at official CGDC or check out their website, cgdcweb.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, give us a review, a like, or a follow. And if you have any questions or queries about today's episode, please shoot us an email over at canadianguilddc@gmail.com. Thanks for helping us build better pathways and being a part of our community.